The moment the crystal reads my class, the entire auditorium bursts out laughing. Not chuckles, not polite snickering behind hands. Full, roaring, doubled-over laughter. The kind that echoes off marble and hits you like a slap. I'm standing on the ascension platform in front of 400 people, the light above my head glowing a color I've never seen assigned to a living person before. Dull gray, not gold, not silver, not even bronze. Gray, vessel, the announcer says, and he actually has to stop himself from laughing too. Class rank F, lowest recorded tier. For a second I don't move. I don't breathe. I just stand there, while my entire future collapses in front of a crowd that paid good money to watch rich kids get blessed by destiny. And then, right on cue, I hear the worst sound in the world. My fiancée's laugh. Celine Varellin doesn't even try to hide it. She's standing with her family, the ones who arranged this marriage to merge two noble houses, and she's laughing behind a gloved hand like I just told the funniest joke she's ever heard. Except I'm not joking. My whole life just got a rank, and the rank is garbage. A vessel, she repeats, loud enough for the front 3 rows to hear. You're telling me I was engaged to a vessel this entire time? That's when the real problem starts. Because it isn't just embarrassment. In this world, your class isn't a job. It's your worth. Sword saints get titles, land, soldiers who follow them into fire. Mage sovereigns get libraries built in their honor before they're old enough to grow a beard. Even the boring classes, the average ones, knight, ranger, cleric, still get respect, still get a place in the world. A vessel gets nothing. A vessel is a person the system looked at and decided wasn't worth giving power to at all. My own father doesn't even come down from the noble box. He just stands up, adjusts his coat, and walks out without a word. That's it. 17 years of being his son, and my father chooses silence over me in front of the entire capital. I should have expected it. I didn't. By nightfall, the betrothal contract between House Ashgrave and House Varellin is publicly torn in the town square. Not privately, publicly. Celine's father does it himself, right there on the steps of the Ascension Hall, and the crowd cheers like they just watched a hero slay a dragon. No daughter of mine marries a vessel, he announces, and the paper burns in a servant's hand right after. I stand at the back of the crowd, hood up, and I watch my future turn to ash in front of 2,000 strangers. That should have been the worst part of my week. It wasn't. 3 days later, my own family formally disowns me. Not quietly, not with some private letter. My father calls a house meeting, invites the extended family, invites the servants, and reads a written declaration, removing me from the Ashgrave bloodline registry. Effective immediately. No inheritance, no name, no home. You'll drag this house down, he says, not even looking at me while he says it. A vessel in the family records is a stain we can't afford. My little sister Ren, the only person in that entire room who still looks at me like I'm human, tries to say something. My father cuts her off before she finishes the first word. That night, I pack one bag. One bag for 17 years of a life that apparently never counted for anything except decoration until the moment it became inconvenient. Here's the part nobody explains to you when you're born into wealth. Losing money is bad. Losing your name in a world run on class rankings is worse. Without House Ashgrave behind me, I'm not just poor. I'm nothing. No guild will take a disowned F-rank noble. No merchant extends credit to a person with a gray light over his head. Even the beggars in the lower district look at me like I'm beneath them. And honestly, by their own logic, I probably am. So I do the only thing left. I go where the desperate go, the lower dungeons. Officially, they're conscription labor sites, a legal way for the Empire to use disowned nobles, debt slaves, and criminals as expendable dungeon-clearing crews. Unofficially, everyone calls them the grave pits, because the survival rate for a new conscript is somewhere around 1 in 5. The recruiter barely looks up from his ledger when I walk in. Class? Vessel. He actually laughs. Actual laughter. The same laugh from the Ascension Hall, like the universe assigned this reaction to my entire existence now. Vessel, he repeats, shaking his head, writing my name into the expendable roster without asking a single follow-up question. Well, at least you'll die fast. Less paperwork. Great. Just great. I get assigned to the lowest tier crew. 12 conscripts, 1 overseer, 1 week's worth of supplies, and a mission to clear the 3rd sublevel of a collapsed mine that's been leaking monster activity into the outer farmlands. Nobody expects us back. That's the quiet part everyone understands, but nobody says out loud. What I didn't know yet, what nobody in that recruitment office could have possibly known, is that the vessel class isn't actually the weakest class in the world. It's the most misunderstood one. See, every other class in this world comes with a ceiling. A sword saint tops out eventually. A mage sovereign hits a wall of mana capacity they can never break past, no matter how hard they train. The system gives you power up front, and then slowly, quietly, it starts closing the door behind you. Vessel doesn't work that way. Vessel starts at 0 because it isn't measuring your starting power at all. It's measuring your capacity, and capacity, unlike power, has no ceiling anyone's ever recorded. I don't know this yet, not fully, not on day 1 in the grave pits with rusted armor, 2 sizes too big, and a sword I can barely lift. All I know is that I'm alive, I'm furious, and I have absolutely nothing left to lose. That combination turns out to be more dangerous than anyone expects. The third sublevel is worse than the reports suggested. Twisted mine tunnels, half-collapsed, crawling with corrupted rock fiends, low-tier monsters that hit like sledgehammers, and travel in packs of 6 or more. Our overseer, a burned-out ex-soldier named Garrick, doesn't even pretend to have a plan beyond keep moving and don't be the slowest one. 2 conscripts die in the first hour. I watch it happen, and I feel something twist in my chest that isn't fear, it's rage. Pure, useless rage, because these people didn't deserve this any more than I did, and nobody up in the capital will ever know their names. That's when the system does something it's never done before. A notification flashes in front of my eyes, translucent blue text that only I can see. Vessel class, conditional trigger detected, witnessing death under threat, absorbing fragment. I don't even understand what it means. I just feel something shift inside me, like a door creaking open somewhere deep in my chest, barely an inch, but open. My stats don't change much. A single point added to something called latent capacity, a stat I didn't even know I had. It should mean nothing. It doesn't feel like nothing. For the first time since the Ascension Hall, I feel something other than humiliation. I feel hungry. We survived that first mission. Barely. 6 of us make it out instead of 12, and Garrick doesn't even bother learning our names before assigning the next mission. That's the rhythm of the grave pits. You go in, some of you don't come back, and the ones who do get sent right back out with barely a night's rest. I should hate every second of it. Instead, I start paying attention. Every fight, every close call, every moment where death brushes past me close enough to feel its breath, the system pulses. Small notifications. Fragment absorbed. Fragment absorbed. Latent capacity increasing. It's slow. It's frustrating. It's the kind of growth that would make anyone else quit in the first week. But here's the thing. Nobody in the capital understood when they laughed at my gray light. I'm not growing like a normal class. I'm growing like something being built from nothing, 1 brick at a time, with no upper limit anyone's ever charted. While the other conscripts with actual combat classes start hitting their natural caps within a month, caps that were baked into their class the moment they were born, my numbers keep climbing. Slowly, quietly, but they never stop. By the second month, I notice something the others haven't. I'm not the weakest conscript on the crew anymore. Tomas Ryer notices it first. He's a former merchant's son, disowned for a different kind of failure, gambling debts instead of a bad class role, and he's the closest thing I have to a friend down here. We watch each other's backs because nobody else will. You're different, he says one night, after I drag both of us out of a collapsing tunnel that should have buried us. 3 weeks ago, you couldn't lift that sword properly. Now you're the reason we're both breathing. Vessel's a growth class, I tell him, though I barely understand it myself yet. Guess nobody bothered checking what that actually means before deciding it was worthless. He laughs, but not the cruel kind. The first laugh I've heard in months that doesn't feel like a knife. Maybe you should keep that quiet, he says. People up top don't like surprises from the bottom. He has no idea how right he is. Because word does travel, eventually, even from the grave pits. Conscript crews that survive longer than expected get noticed. Overseers report unusual clear times. And unusual clear times draw exactly the kind of attention I don't want yet. Draven Calloway. The name alone used to make my stomach twist, back when I still had a name of my own to protect. Draven was the sword prodigy everyone compared me to, at every family gathering, every social event, every miserable dinner where my father would sigh and say, "Why can't you be more like the Calloway boy?" Draven awakened a Sword Saint bloodline class at 14. By 16, he was already fighting exhibition matches against actual knights and winning. He's also, as it turns out, the man currently engaged to Celine Varellin. I find this out the hard way. When House Calloway sponsors a special assignment to the Grave Pits, officially framed as noble charity work, unofficially understood by everyone with half a brain, as Draven wanting to test himself against real danger with an audience watching. The audience includes Celine. I don't want to see her. I really, genuinely don't. But the Empire loves theater more than it loves logic, and someone in the Ministry decides the surviving conscript crew from the 3rd sublevel should be present for the exhibition clearing, standing at the edges like set decoration while nobility watches their golden boy perform. That's how I end up standing in a mining tunnel, disowned, forgotten, gray light F-rank vessel, watching my ex-fiancée smile at the man who's about to make a public spectacle of monsters I already know how to kill in my sleep. Draven spots me almost immediately. Well, he says, loud enough for the noble entourage to hear, loud enough for Celine to hear, loud enough for every single person in that tunnel to hear. If it isn't the vessel still alive, impressive, in a pathetic sort of way, the crowd laughs. Celine doesn't laugh this time. She just watches me with an expression I can't quite read, something between pity and curiosity, like she's trying to figure out how the boy she mocked in public is still standing here months later, instead of dead in a collapsed tunnel like everyone assumed. Since you're here, Draven continues, clearly enjoying himself, why don't you help me warm up? Won't take more than a minute. He says it like a joke. He means it as an insult. What he doesn't know, what nobody in that tunnel knows yet, is that I've spent the last 4 months absorbing fragments off the corpses of monsters that would have killed him in his first week down here. I should have said no. I should have walked away and let him have his little performance. Instead, I say yes. Big mistake. His, not mine. The fight barely lasts 90 seconds, but every second of it rewires how the noble crowd sees the world. Draven opens with a Saint-tier sword technique. Fast, clean, the kind of strike that would have ended most conscripts before they even registered the movement. I dodge it without thinking, my body reacting on instinct, built from months of dodging things that actually wanted to eat me alive. The crowd goes quiet. He tries again, faster this time, embarrassment already creeping into his expression. I dodge that one too, and this time I don't just dodge. I close the distance and put him on the ground, with a counter he clearly never trained against, because nobody trains against a class that officially doesn't have any combat techniques at all. Silence. Complete, suffocating silence in that tunnel. The kind where you can hear torches flickering against stone. Draven scrambles up, face red, sword shaking in his hand. That was luck, he says, voice cracking slightly. A fluke. Then the voice rang out. Not his, not mine. The system's glowing blue text, visible only to me, but the tone of it, the certainty of it, settles something inside my chest, like a lock clicking into place. Vessel class, evolution threshold reached, latent capacity, overflow detected, initiating first-tier ascension. The gray light above my head, the same light that got me laughed out of the ascension hall, flickers and changes color, not gold, not silver, something the crowd doesn't have a name for, a shifting color that seems to bend and pulse instead of holding still, and every single person in that tunnel goes dead silent watching it happen. That's impossible, someone whispers. Classes don't evolve mid-fight. Except mine just did. Draven doesn't understand what he's looking at, and honestly, neither do I. Not completely, but I understand enough. I understand that whatever just happened, it made me faster, stronger, sharper, in the span of a single heartbeat, and Draven's still standing there processing the fact that he just lost to a vessel in front of his fiancée and half the capital's aristocracy. I don't gloat. I don't need to. The silence does all the talking for me. Celine finds me afterward, alone, away from the noble entourage still buzzing with confused whispers about a class evolution nobody's ever documented before. You should have told someone, she says, arms crossed, voice tighter than I remember it being months ago. What just happened back there? That's not normal. That's not supposed to be possible. Neither was disowning your own son for a gray light, I say. Guess this world's full of things that aren't supposed to happen. She flinches, just slightly, and for the first time since the Ascension Hall, I see something other than mockery in her expression. Something closer to doubt. They're going to come looking for you, she warns. People at the top don't like vessels evolving into things they can't classify. It threatens the whole hierarchy they built everything on. I should have listened closer to that warning. At the time, I had no idea how right she actually was. Word spreads fast after the tunnel incident, faster than anything the Empire's usual gossip networks could manage on their own, which tells me someone with actual influence is pushing the story deliberately. Within a week, I'm no longer just a disowned vessel surviving in the grave pits. I'm the ghost of the lower dungeons, a name conscripts started using after 3 more crews I joined came back with 0 casualties under my lead, an unheard-of record down here. Garrick, our overseer, starts treating me differently too, less like expendable labor, more like an asset he doesn't fully understand, but definitely doesn't want to lose. Ministry's asking questions, he tells me one night, voice low, like the walls themselves might be listening. About a vessel class evolving without registered documentation. That's not the kind of attention you want down here. I didn't ask for attention, I tell him. Doesn't matter what you asked for, he says. Matters what you've got now. He's right, of course, though I don't fully understand how right until the ministry sends an actual Inquisitor down into the grave pits 3 days later. Robes pristine, expression cold. The kind of official presence that never visits conscript labor sites unless something has genuinely alarmed the people at the top. Her name is Inquisitor Morella Thane, and she doesn't waste time on pleasantries. Show me your class registry, she says, the moment she finds me clearing debris from the 4th sublevel. Not a request. An order backed by Imperial authority. Nobody down here can refuse. I show her. The gray light flickers, then shifts into that same shapeless, shifting color from the tunnel fight, and her expression, carefully neutral until that exact moment, cracks just slightly. Vessel, she says quietly, more to herself than to me. Genuine vessel. I thought that line went extinct 3 generations ago. Extinct? I ask. I thought it was just the weakest class. Her eyes lock onto mine, and for a second, I see something that looks almost like fear behind the composed Imperial mask. That's the story they tell people, she says. It's not the truth. Then she tells me something that changes everything. Centuries ago, before the current class hierarchy was standardized by Imperial decree, vessel classes existed openly, and they weren't ranked at the bottom. They were feared. A true vessel, given enough time, enough trials, enough near-death evolution triggers, could eventually surpass every capped class in existence, because capped classes were always designed with a ceiling the ruling sovereign bloodlines controlled directly. Vessels had no ceiling, which meant vessels had no permanent master. So the Empire buried the truth. Rewrote the class registry, reclassified vessel as F rank, the weakest possible designation, and made sure every Ascension Hall in the Empire displayed it that way, ensuring that any child born with the bloodline trait would be publicly humiliated, disowned, and discarded, long before they ever discovered what they actually were. I stand there, in a collapsed mining tunnel, 4 sublevels beneath the capital, absorbing the fact that my entire humiliation, my father's cold silence, Celine's public mockery, the broken engagement, the disowning, all of it, wasn't an accident of bad luck. It was the system working exactly as designed. They knew, I say quietly. The whole time. They knew what vessel actually meant, and they built an entire ranking system just to bury it. They didn't just know, Morella says. They engineered it. Every generation, a handful of vessels are born. Every generation, they're humiliated into obscurity before they can awaken past the first tier. You're the first one in 3 generations to survive long enough to reach a second evolution. That should have solved everything. It didn't. Because the moment Morella finishes explaining, the ground beneath the grave pits shudders, hard enough to knock loose stone from the ceiling, and a warning horn echoes through every tunnel simultaneously. Something huge has broken through the sealed boundary between the mine and the deeper, unmapped layer beneath it. Something the Empire has kept sealed for generations, for a very specific reason nobody down here was ever told. Garrick's voice crackles through the emergency signal stone. All conscripts, evacuate immediately. Repeat. This is not a drill. Morella's composed expression finally breaks completely. That seal, she whispers, was supposed to be permanent. What's behind it? I ask. She looks at me, and for the first time since she arrived, I see actual dread in an Inquisitor's eyes. The reason vessels were buried in the first place, she says, A monster from before the Empire standardized the class system, something the old vessels were the only ones capable of sealing. Right on cue, the tunnel wall 30 feet ahead of us doesn't just crack, it explodes outward, and something steps through the gap that makes every instinct in my body scream to run. It doesn't look like the rock fiends or corrupted monsters I've spent months fighting. It looks wrong, like something assembled from broken pieces of different creatures, shifting and unstable, easily 3 times my height, radiating a pressure that makes the air itself feel heavier. Garrick's voice crackles again, panicked this time. Everyone out! Now that's not a pit monster, that's a breach entity. We are not equipped for. The creature moves before he finishes the sentence, and the tunnel behind us collapses in a wave of stone and dust, sealing off the only exit route Garrick's crew was heading toward. Screaming. Chaos. 12 conscripts scrambling in every direction. Morella shouting orders that nobody can hear over the collapsing rock. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, I realize with total sinking clarity that the only people standing between this thing and an escape into the populated tunnels above are the handful of us still trapped down here. I had no choice. I step forward instead of back. The creature notices immediately, that shifting, wrong-angled head turning toward me with something that isn't quite recognition, but isn't quite hostility either, more like curiosity, the way a predator studies something unfamiliar before deciding whether it's prey or threat. Vessel class, critical threshold detected, second evolution imminent. The light above my head doesn't just flicker this time, it ignites, a column of shifting, shapeless brilliance that lights up the entire collapsed tunnel, and for one suspended second, I feel every fragment I've absorbed over the last 4 months slammed together at once. Months of near-death, humiliation, exhaustion, rage, hope, all of it converging into something that finally has a shape. The pain hits before the power does. It feels like my entire skeleton is being rebuilt from the inside, every nerve screaming, and I hear myself shouting, not in fear anymore, in something closer to release. 4 months of buried fury finally finding an outlet big enough to hold it. When the light fades, I'm not holding the same rusted sword I walked in with. I'm holding something the system doesn't even have a proper name for yet. A weapon that shifted into existence alongside my second evolution, and the creature in front of me, the thing an entire empire buried a truth to keep hidden from, takes one step back. It had no idea what it just woke up. The fight that follows isn't clean. It isn't the kind of victory that looks good from a distance. I get thrown into a wall hard enough to crack stone. I get burned, cut, nearly crushed twice. But every single time that creature thinks it's finished me, the system pulses again, fragment absorbed, and I get back up faster than I have any right to. Morella watches the entire thing from behind a collapsed support beam, and later she tells me her exact thought in that moment was that she was watching the Empire's oldest secret get proven true in real time, in the worst possible location, with the worst possible timing. When the creature finally goes down, sealed back through a rupture, Morella manages to stabilize using emergency Imperial wardstones. The tunnel goes silent, except for my own ragged breathing, and Garrick's crew slowly emerging from behind rubble, staring at me like they're seeing a stranger wearing my face. Tomas is the first to speak. I think, he says slowly, we need to stop calling you the ghost of the lower dungeons. Why? I ask, barely able to stand. Because ghosts don't do that, he says, staring at the shifting light still fading above my head. News of a breach entity surfacing beneath the capital cannot be buried the way the Empire buried the truth about vessels 3 generations ago. Too many witnesses, too much structural damage reaching the surface farmlands. Within a day, the story reaches every noble house in the capital, and within 2, it reaches House Ashgrave, and House Virilon, and House Calloway, in exactly the order I would have predicted if you'd asked me who'd panic first. My father, the same man who couldn't be bothered to leave the noble box when I got my class reading, personally requests an audience. I refuse. Celine sends a letter. I don't open it. Draven, apparently unable to stand the idea of being publicly humiliated a second time, without at least trying to salvage his reputation, challenges me to a formal rematch, this time in the capital's central arena, in front of every noble house, every guildmaster, every ranking official in the Empire. That's when I understand what's actually happening. This isn't about a rematch anymore. This is the Empire trying to force a controlled, public narrative around what I am before the truth spreads on its own, and the entire class hierarchy they built collapses under its own lies. I accept the challenge anyway. Not for Draven. Not even really for Celine, though I won't pretend some petty part of me doesn't want her watching. I accept, because Morella tells me something the night before that changes the entire stakes of the match. If you win this publicly, she says, the truth about vessel classes becomes impossible to bury again. If you lose, or if you refuse, they'll quietly reclassify what happened in the grave pits as an isolated anomaly, and they'll make sure no other vessel survives long enough to reach a second evolution ever again. So it isn't a rematch anymore. It's a war for the truth, fought in an arena built for entertainment, in front of an empire that spent generations making sure a boy like me would never stand here at all. The arena is packed the night of the match, every noble house represented, my father seated in the same box he refused to leave for me months ago, Celine beside him this time, instead of beside Draven's family, an arrangement I don't have time to think about before the horn sounds. Draven comes out swinging immediately, no hesitation this time. No arrogant warm-up speech, because he already knows exactly what happened in that tunnel, and he isn't willing to underestimate me twice. He's better than I remember. Sharper. Faster. Whatever training he's done since the tunnel humiliation, it shows. And for the first 2 minutes of the match, I'm on the defensive in a way I haven't been since before my first evolution. But here's what Draven still doesn't understand. What the entire Empire still refuses to understand about the class they buried 3 generations ago. Every hit I take, every close call, every moment where his saint-tier technique nearly ends me, the system pulses. Not loudly, not obviously, but it pulses. And somewhere in the 4th minute of that fight, I feel the threshold building again, faster this time, because apparently the closer a vessel gets to its true shape, the less it needs to nearly die to keep growing. Draven lands a strike that should end the match. I let it connect, on purpose, because I need him fully extended, fully committed, fully certain he's already won. Then I move. The crowd doesn't even register what happens until it's already over. One motion, faster than anything Draven trained to counter, and he's on the ground, weapons skittering across the arena floor, my blade at his throat, and the entire capital goes silent for the 2nd time in a month, watching a class they were told was worthless end a Sword Saint bloodline fight in a single exchange. I don't kill him. I don't even really want to. I just stand there, holding the win, holding the silence, holding 4 months of humiliation, finally turned inside out, in front of every single person who laughed at that gray light in the Ascension Hall. Then Inquisitor Morella steps into the arena, unannounced, Imperial authority overriding the ceremonial officials, scrambling to figure out how to handle a match that's just publicly detonated their entire class hierarchy narrative. Before this match is recorded in Imperial records, she announces, voice carrying across the silent arena, the Empire owes this city, and this boy, the truth about what a vessel actually is. And then, right there, in front of every noble house, every guild master, every person who ever called me worthless, she tells them everything. The buried history, the engineered humiliation, the 3 generations of vessels discarded before they could ever reach their true shape. The silence that follows isn't mockery this time. It's the sound of an entire hierarchy, realizing the foundation it stood on was a lie. My father doesn't say a word. He just stands there in the noble box, face pale, watching the son he disowned become the single most important discovery the Empire's class system has produced in 3 generations. Celine finds me after, once the crowd finally starts moving again, once the officials start scrambling to control a story that's already too big to contain. I didn't know, she says quietly, about any of it. I thought you just failed. I did fail, I tell her. I failed at being what they wanted me to be. Turns out that's not the same thing as failing at all. She doesn't have a response to that. I don't wait for one. Because that same night, after the arena empties, after the noble houses retreat into private panic about what a true vessel evolution means for a hierarchy they've spent generations protecting, Morella finds me alone near the arena's outer wall. There's something else you need to know, she says. And her expression tells me immediately that this is worse than everything she's already revealed. The breach entity beneath the grave pits wasn't an accident. Someone deliberately weakened the old seal. Someone with enough Imperial access to know exactly where the original vessel wards were placed centuries ago. Someone wanted it loose, I say slowly, understanding hitting like a second impact. Someone wanted to see if a true vessel evolution would actually happen when it surfaced, she confirms. Which means, whoever did this already suspected you existed. Which means, this was never just an accident down in those tunnels. I feel something cold settle in my chest. Colder than the humiliation of the Ascension Hall. Colder than my father's silence. Colder than watching my engagement burn in a public square. Who? I ask. Morella's expression goes carefully blank. The same imperial mask she wore the day she first found me in the grave pits. That, she says, is a question that goes higher than either of us is ready for yet. Behind her, in the shadow of the arena wall, I see a figure I don't recognize, watching us from a distance too far for normal eyes to catch clearly. Except my eyes aren't normal anymore. And for just a second, before the figure disappears into the crowd, I catch a glimpse of a class light hovering above their head, the same shifting, shapeless color as mine. I'm not the only true vessel left standing after all, and whoever they are, they were watching this entire match unfold like they already knew exactly how it would end. I don't stop to think, I move. The figure's already melting into the crowd streaming out of the arena, and if I lose them in this mess of nobles and guards and screaming spectators, I lose them for good. So I push forward, shoving past silk sleeves and gold pins, ignoring the gasps when people realize who's shoving past them. The vessel. The one who just ended a Sword Saints win streak in front of the whole capital. Nobody stops me. Nobody dares. The shifting light above the stranger's head cuts through the torchlit crowd like a compass needle, and I lock onto it the second it flickers between two banner poles near the western exit. Same shapeless color as mine. Same impossible glow that shouldn't exist according to every class registry in the Empire. I'm not the only one. That thought alone is enough to keep me moving, even as my body screams at me to stop. Because I just fought a duel and evolved twice in one night, and every muscle I own feels like it's been wrung out and hung up wet. Doesn't matter. I've spent 17 years being told what I am doesn't exist. I'm not letting the answer disappear into an alley without a fight. The figure ducks through a side gate reserved for arena staff, and I follow, ignoring the guard who barely has time to blink before I'm past him. The noise of the crowd drops away behind stone walls, replaced by something colder, narrower streets, older buildings. This is the capital nobody puts on postcards, the underlevels stacked beneath the noble districts like the parts of a house you don't show guests, and the deeper I go, the darker it gets. Should have grabbed a torch. Great, just great. The shifting light ahead flickers again, turning down a stairwell carved straight into old foundation stone, and I take the steps two at a time, boots slapping wet rock, breath tearing out of me in ragged clouds. Whoever this is, they're fast. Not panicked fast, controlled fast. The kind of fast that comes from decades of needing to disappear on command. I'm not here to fight you, I call out, voice bouncing off close walls. I just want to talk. Silence. Then a woman's voice, calm in a way that unsettles me more than shouting would. That's what they all say before the cuffs come out. I stop dead in the stairwell. Cuffs? Ascension wardens don't introduce themselves politely, boy. They smile first. I'm not a warden, I say. I don't even know what that is. A pause. Long enough that I hear water dripping somewhere down the tunnel, somewhere close, the underlevels bleeding into old drainage channels beneath the capital. Then, quieter. You really don't, do you? No. Then you've got about 5 minutes before that becomes a very dangerous kind of ignorance. The light shifts around a corner, and this time she doesn't run. I round the bend slow, hands loose at my sides, every instinct from 4 months in the grave pits, screaming at me to stay ready without looking ready. The tunnel opens into a wider cistern chamber, old and dry, lit only by the pale, unstable glow hovering above her head. She's not what I expected. I don't know what I expected. Someone younger, maybe? Someone as raw and unfinished as I feel. Instead, I'm looking at a woman who could be my mother's age. Dark hair pulled back tight, a face carved by exhaustion rather than time. Eyes that have clearly spent decades deciding, moment to moment, whether the person in front of her is a threat. Right now, those eyes are doing exactly that to me. Isla, she says finally, like the name costs her something to hand over. Isla Marrow. Roen Ashgrave, I answer, then catch myself. Not anymore, technically, just Roen. Something almost like a smile crosses her face, gone before it fully lands. The disowning, I heard. Whole capital heard, I imagine, before tonight buried it under something bigger. You watched the match. I watch everything, she says. It's the only reason I'm still breathing. That's when the real weight of what I'm looking at finally lands. Not a stranger with a matching light. A survivor. Someone who evolved once, decades before I was born, and then vanished so completely the Empire's own suppression machine never found her. How long, I ask, have you been hiding? Since I was younger than you are now. Her voice doesn't shake, but something underneath it does. I reached my first evolution the same way you did. Near death, no warning, no idea what it meant. Difference is, nobody explained the truth to me afterward. I had to learn it the hard way, by watching what happened to the vessels who didn't hide fast enough. What happened to them? Isla looks at me like she's deciding how much of this I can carry tonight, on top of everything else the last 4 months already loaded onto my back. Some got imprisoned, she says, quietly. No trial, no announcement, just gone one day. Official record says, died in a training accident. The luckier ones got worse. Forcibly bonded to a noble house, their evolution locked, their will bent, turned into a controlled weapon paraded out, whenever that house needed to remind the Empire why they mattered. A leash, dressed up as an honor. Something cold moves through my chest, colder than anything Morella told me in that collapsed tunnel. Bonded, I repeat. You mean enslaved. I mean exactly that, Isla says, dressed in prettier language. But, yes, that's the fate waiting for every vessel who evolves loud enough to get noticed. And boy, tonight, in that arena, in front of every noble house in the capital, I got noticed, I finish. You got noticed, she agrees. Loudly, publicly, in front of the one man who spent 30 years making sure nobody like us ever gets that loud again. The mention hangs there, sharp and unfinished, and I think immediately of Morella's careful blank expression outside the arena wall. That is a question that goes higher than either of us is ready for yet. An Inquisitor told me the truth tonight, I say slowly, watching Isla's face for a reaction. About the buried history, about what vessels actually are. Isla's expression doesn't soften. If anything, it sharpens. Which Inquisitor? Morella Thane. Something flickers behind Isla's eyes, fast and unreadable, gone before I can name it. And she just handed you all of that freely. In the middle of an active breach containment. She seemed like she was trying to help. Or, Isla says, voice flat and careful, someone above her wanted the truth surfaced in exactly the way it surfaced tonight. Controlled. Public. In front of every noble house at once. Right after you'd already proven yourself in an arena duel they couldn't quietly bury. I open my mouth to argue, and then I stop, because the shape of what she's suggesting settles into my stomach like a stone dropping through water. You think she was smoking me out? I think, Isla says, that in 30 years of hiding, I have never once seen the Imperial apparatus reveal a truth by accident. Every leak is a decision. Every reveal serves someone's purpose. The question you should be asking isn't whether Morella told you the truth, it's whose purpose it served, for you to hear it exactly when you did. Great. Just great. I get one night of feeling like the humiliation finally meant something. Like the truth finally cracked the lie wide open in my favor, and already someone's teaching me to distrust the person who handed it to me. She helped me stabilize the breach rupture, I say, weaker than I want it to sound. I'm not saying she's your enemy, Isla says, something almost gentle threading through the warning now. I'm saying you don't know that she isn't, not yet. Trust is a currency down here, Roen, and the Empire has spent 3 generations teaching every Inquisitor, every ministry official, every noble house, exactly how to spend it against people like us. The cistern chamber goes quiet, except for that steady drip of water somewhere behind her, and I feel the exhaustion of the night finally catching up all at once. The duel, the evolution, the chase through half the underlevels of the capital, all of it collapsing down into a single question I don't know how to answer. So what do? Isla studies me for a long moment. Then, for the first time since I found her, something in her posture eases, just slightly, like she's finally deciding I'm worth the risk of an actual answer instead of another warning. You come with me, she says, tonight, before whoever's watching this city decides you've made enough noise for one lifetime. Rule 1 of survival, apparently. Whether you're a disowned noble or a decades-hidden vessel, don't argue with the person who's kept themselves alive longer than you have. I follow her. The route Isla takes isn't the route I would have picked. She avoids every main tunnel, every lit passage, cutting instead through half-collapsed service corridors that clearly haven't seen Imperial maintenance crews in years. She moves like someone who mapped every inch of this darkness a long time ago and never stopped updating the map since. You built all this, I say, watching her duck under a support beam without even glancing at it first. I built a life out of not existing, she says. Tunnels are just the easiest part. The safe house, when we finally reach it, isn't what I expected either. No hidden fortress, no secret compound. Just a converted storage cellar beneath an abandoned tannery, walls lined with old shelving, a single table, 2 cots, and enough dust to prove nobody's questioned this space in a very long time. Home, Isla says, without irony, like the word still means something to her, even reduced to this. I collapse onto one of the cots before my legs give out on their own terms instead of mine, and for a moment neither of us says anything. The silence isn't uncomfortable. It's the first quiet I've had since the Ascension Hall changed my entire life with one dull gray light, and my body takes it like water after 4 months in a desert. You said you reached your first evolution, I say eventually. Just one. Isla's hand still over the small stove she's lighting in the corner. Yes, I've had 2 tonight, maybe close to a third, if what happened in that arena means what I think it means. It does, she says, quiet. I felt it from across the crowd. That's how I found you in the first place. Then why haven't you? I stop myself, hearing how it sounds before I finish it, and Isla finishes it for me anyway. No anger in her voice, just old, worn resignation. Why haven't I grown past my first tear in 30 years? I didn't mean, you did, she says, not unkindly. It's the right question, just not one I've had to answer out loud in a very long time. She sits across from me, the small stove flame throwing shifting light across her face that almost matches the color hovering above her head, and for the first time since the cistern chamber, I see something underneath the composed survivor. Something tired, in a way that has nothing to do with the hour. Growth requires risk, she says. Real risk. Near death. Genuine threat. The kind of trial that forces the system to crack you open and rebuild something bigger. I learned that the hard way, same as you're learning it now. But I learned something else too. Watching what happened to every vessel before me, who kept pushing toward a second evolution the moment they felt the threshold building. What happened to them? They got loud, Isla says, same as you did tonight. And loud gets noticed, and noticed gets hunted. I watched 3 people I loved get taken in the span of 5 years, Roen. Not killed, worse, bonded, turned into leashed weapons for houses that paraded them out like prize hounds. After the 3rd one, I made a choice. You stopped. I stopped, she confirms. On purpose. Every time I've felt that threshold building since, every time the system's pulsed and offered me the door to something more, I've shut it, because staying weak enough to stay hidden meant staying free, and free, even capped, even small, felt like more than any of them got after they were caught. The weight of that admission sits heavy in the cellar's small quiet, and I understand, suddenly, with a clarity that makes my chest ache, exactly what kind of ceiling Isla built for herself. Not the one the system gave her, the one she chose, out of grief, out of survival, out of watching people she loved get turned into something worse than dead. That's not weakness, I say quietly. Tell that to the version of me at 19 who used to dream about what a second evolution would feel like. Her voice doesn't crack, but it comes close. I made peace with it a long time ago. Mostly. Neither of us says anything for a while after that. The flame in the small stove pops and settles, and somewhere above us the city keeps moving, oblivious to the 2 people in a converted tannery cellar carrying the exact secret it spent 3 generations burying. The wardens, I say eventually, remembering the word from earlier, the one that made Isla go still in that stairwell. You mentioned them before. Cuffs, you said, smiling first. Isla's expression shifts, the tired warmth from a moment ago folding back into the careful, alert survivor I met in the cistern. Ascension wardens, she says. Officially, they don't exist. No public roster, no ministry listing, nothing you'd find in any registry a normal citizen could access. Unofficially, they're the Empire's answer to exactly what happened in that arena tonight. An answer to me. An answer to anything that threatens the class hierarchy the Empire spent 3 generations protecting, she says. A quiet task force, formed specifically to locate unregistered vessel evolutions, and neutralize them before they become public knowledge the way yours already has. Neutralize, I repeat. Meaning what exactly? Meaning whatever's most convenient, Isla says. Capture if you're cooperative. Suppression if you're not. I've heard whispers of a technique specifically engineered to counter vessel-type growth, something that locks the evolution threshold entirely, strips the very thing that makes us dangerous. I've never seen it used. I've only heard what it did to the people it was used on, which was nothing good, she says, and the flatness in her voice tells me that's all the answer I'm getting tonight. And honestly, I don't push for more. Some doors, apparently, even someone as blunt as Isla doesn't open easily. So they're already looking for me, I say instead. They were already looking for the possibility of you, Isla corrects. Rumors of a vessel surviving the grave pits longer than expected, evolving where nobody could bury it quietly. Tonight, in that arena, in front of every noble house in the capital, you stopped being a possibility. Then the voice rang out. Not Isla's, not mine. The system's, glowing faint blue at the edge of my vision, quiet but unmistakable. Vessel class, latent threshold building, second tier stabilizing. I barely register it before Isla's head snaps up. Alert in a way that has nothing to do with the notification I just received, and everything to do with something she's heard, something outside, something close. What? I start, but she's already moving, crossing the cellar in 3 fast strides, pressing her palm flat against the old stone wall, like she's listening to the building itself. They're here, she says, voice dropped to something barely above a whisper. Faster than I expected, far faster. Who's here? Isla turns, and for the first time since I met her in that cistern chamber, I see actual fear behind her composed survivor's mask, the same kind of dread I saw in Morella's eyes right before the breach entity tore through that mine wall. The wardens, she says. They're already outside. The words barely finish leaving her mouth before the tannery floor above us groans under the weight of boots. Too many boots. Moving with the kind of coordinated silence that isn't panic, isn't chaos, isn't anything like the conscript crews I've spent 4 months surviving alongside. It's precision, and it's already here.